Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 123 based on novel. So let's start. Broken Heart Palm is a high-level fighting skill, which is many times stronger than Xiao Yan's high-level fighting skill. It's a pity that Xiao Yang's cultivation is only 6.5 stars. Otherwise, if you can exert all the power of Broken Heart Palm, it's not a 2-star fighting emperor. I'm afraid that the patriarch of the 4 major sects can't bear it. But at present, limited by his own strength, the power of the Broken Heart Palm exerted by Xiao Yang is less than 1% of his real power. Bang! With a violent bang like shelling, at the place where Xiao Yang collided with the fighting skills, an invisible force that was just fierce and overbearing swept away, turned into a terrible energy storm, and swept away everything between heaven and earth in the twinkling of an eye. Seeing the sudden appearance of Xiao Yang, Zhao Xian and Jin Yaro suddenly changed their faces. They were all surprised at this. However, the expression on Zhao Xian's face changed into a disdainful sneer again. A 6-star and half-emperor is just a half-emperor. Even if the strength is good, the half-emperor is only a half-emperor after all. In the eyes of the strong fighting emperor, it is impossible to burst out the power comparable to it. Therefore, Xiao Yang's seemingly mayfly shaking the tree at the moment attracted a burst of sarcasm in Zhao Xian's mouth. Xiao Yang, do you really think you can compete with the strong fighting emperor? The 4 patriarchs will keep their hands on you, but I won't. When the voice fell, Zhao Xian suddenly shook his long gun and swept it across. The momentum on the 1,000 waves suddenly soared. A fighting wave emitting dazzling light was immediately contained in it. With a bang, Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro flew out. Woman, I didn't intend to be your enemy, but since you are determined to die, you can't blame me for destroying flowers. One blow easily shocked Xiao Yang and his 2 people back. The smile on Zhao Xian's face was even more ferocious. He pointed at the long gun in his hand, and the cold glittering tip pointed straight to Jin Yaro. For Zhao Xian, Jin Yaro is the only one who can pose a threat to him. As long as she can be solved, Xiao Yang will naturally become a turtle in a jar and will die. Whoosh dash. As the fighting skills dispersed, Zhao Xian's body flashed across the void like a flash of lightning. In a twinkling of an eye, he appeared in front of Jin Yaro. The long gun as white as snow in his hand closed close to him. He held the handle of the gun tightly with both hands and exerted his arms together. The long gun pierced the void and stabbed Jin Yaro's heart with a bloodthirsty cold orn. Burst. However, at this time, a cold low drink came from heaven and earth. At the same time, the look on Zhao Xian's face also changed suddenly. With that low drink, an inexplicable force burst out in Zhao Xian's chest and heart, just like a long-buried bomb, exploding at the moment. The surging force suddenly gushed out of Zhao Xian's body. In a flash, Zhao Xian's chest was like being filled with gas, and his heart was about to explode under the pressure of this sudden force. Bastard! What's going on? While greatly shocked, Zhao Xian was forced to withdraw his offensive. At the same time, in Zhao Xian's body, a surge of fighting spirit ran wildly from one meridians like a running river. Before the force in his heart was about to explode, he quickly shrouded it and suppressed it with a more crazy time. In this short breathing time, Zhao Xian's forehead was already covered with dense beads of sweat. The changes in his body, even the 2-star fighting emperor, also felt a sense of shock in his heart. If this kind of thing is a semi-emperor, it is absolutely impossible to have the opportunity to suppress that force. The violent degree of that power seems to have exceeded the level of a half-emperor. Even ordinary strong men who fight against the emperor can't suppress it in such a short time. Rao Shi now feels a lingering fear in his heart, even though the changes in his body have been gradually suppressed. Hihi, it seems that my mayfly is not unable to shake your towering tree. At this time, on the other side, Xiao Yang, pale and bloody at the corners of his mouth, stood up again with his chest undulating. The corners of his mouth showed a mouth of bloody teeth. The bright red color added a cruel meaning to the smile. Coupled with Xiao Yang's dark and clear eyes, people saw it and felt cold in their hearts. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Zhao Xian, who was filled with horror, and Jin Yaro, who escaped the disaster, both shot their eyes at Xiao Yang at this moment. Suddenly, the look in their eyes changed again. Jin Yaro's eyes were full of surprise. At this moment, it completely turned into a shock. He didn't expect that Xiao Yang in front of him could make Zhao show such a frightened look. What did this guy do? In her heart, Jin Yaro was more curious about the ordinary-looking young man in black robe. Xiao Yang, who can make the 4 major sects covet so much and run rampant within their sphere of influence, is not an ordinary person. It's the fighting skill just now. Hearing what Xiao Yang said, Zhao Zian was calm at the moment. He didn't believe that Xiao Yang, a 6-star and a half emperor, could hurt him just by one word. I'm afraid the change just now was caused by the fighting skill Xiao Yang used earlier. Hehe, it seems that fighting the emperor and the strong is not a fool. Xiao Yang sneered, but Jin Yao frowned. She whispered in her heart, and looked at Xiao Yang curiously. Seeing that Xiao Yang didn't deny it, Zhao Zian was even more surprised. He could pour into his body without his knowledge. What level can he do this fighting skill? In this regard, Xiao Yang smiled coldly. The biggest feature of Broken Heart Palm is that it, like the 8-pole avalanche, uses dark strength as its force. The most powerful force of the whole fighting skill is the terrible dark strength of late attack. In addition, this Broken Heart Palm is an Italian-level fighting skill. Once it breaks out, both soul and body will be seriously damaged. Generally speaking, if it is hit hard by Broken Heart Palm, there is no possibility of life. Of course, no matter what Zhao Zian says, he is a strong man fighting against the emperor, but now Xiao Yang is just a half-emperor. Just like Zhao Zian said, pseudo-emperor, how can he be the opponent of the real strong man fighting against the emperor? Although the heartbreaking palm is an Italian-level fighting skill, if it is used with the strength of Emperor Xiao Yang, the fighting spirit it needs is not enough to support, let alone strength. Xiao Yang, don't be complacent. With your strength, I believe that such high-level fighting skills can only be used once with all your strength. Now you are at the end of a powerful crossbow. In the sky, Zhao Zian waved his snow-white long gun. The wind of hunting sounded in the sky. The invisible pressure was like a boulder falling on Xiao Yang's chest. What Zhao Zian said is true. After using the heart-breaking palm, Xiao Yang's fighting spirit has been exhausted. At the moment, although he still looks strong, in fact, he is just strong outside but weak in the middle. However, compared with Xiao Yang, after solving the violent power in his body, Zhao Zian is much better. He has a long breath, which is much better than Jin Yao. Xiao Yang, take the girl away first. I'll drag you here. After you leave, I'll find a way to get away. Jin Yaromai stared at Zhao Zian with a solemn tone. After hundreds of encounters, Jin Yaro knows more about Zhao Zian's strength. The latter is only stronger than her. If Xiao Yang and Murong Qianqian continue to stay here, I'm afraid none of them can go in the end. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yanggang wanted to frown and open his mouth, but Zhao Zian suddenly gave a sneer, stared at Xiao Yangsan with a grim smile, and said angrily, "None of you want to go today." With a sneer, Zhao Zian's long gun immediately drew in front of him. The close friction between the sharp gun tip and the air sent out a harsh sound explosion in the sky. At the same time, 4 unusual smells emerged at the same time between the heaven and earth where the 4 people are located, southeast, northwest and 4 different directions. These 4 smells are the very obscure smells that Xiao Yang noticed when he first came here. Haishi, start the array. In the face of Zhao Zian, the 3 of Xiao Yang, a sneer suddenly came out of his mouth. At the same time, the roaring fighting spirit also turned into a fighting light column in 4 directions, rising into the sky and sinking into the void. With the 4 pillars of light standing upright, the void within hundreds of feet around the 4 people in the field was quickly shrouded by a layer of golden energy. The 4 barriers spread rapidly. In the twinkling of an eye, there were only 4 barriers left, and 1 gap could be passed through. And the direction of the gap is also impartial, facing the west. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang felt a little nervous. Zhao Zian could send someone to use the array to stop him. It must be a complete preparation. I'm afraid he can't break the array just by his current state. At present, if you want to leave the shrouded range of this array, you can only rely on this gap and quickly get out of this array with the help of this last time. Well. However, although he had some ideas in his heart, Xiao Yang just started, and his whole body couldn't help but stagger. The lack of fighting spirit in the body and the lack of soul power makes Xiao Yang almost on the edge of coma at the moment. Even if he continues to stand in this void, he also has a lot of pressure for Xiao Yang. With Xiao Yang's current state, it is impossible to get away from this array, not to mention taking a Murong Qianqian. Go. I'll block this array for you. Jiao drank and Jin Yarrow waved his long sword. Suddenly, the red sword light burst out like pieces of fire maple leaves, pounding on the spreading array barrier. With Jin Yarrow's action, the speed of the barrier spread has indeed decreased a lot. At the same time, besides the array, the breath in the 4 directions also fluctuated violently. Obviously, they are the core supporting the whole array. If the array is affected, they will inevitably be implicated. Seeing this, Xiao Yang shook his head fiercely and hurriedly stuffed a Huichi pill. Taking advantage of the slightly recovered fighting spirit in his body, he moved and flashed in front of Murong Qianqian. He took the latter's jade hand in the palm of his hand. "Be careful, Master Jin Fang." The tone solemnly reminded a sentence. Xiao Yang no longer hesitated, moved his body, pulled Murong Qianqian, quickly dodged, and quickly flew away outside the array. If you want to go, it's not that easy." However, Zhao Xian sneered, waved his long gun, shocked the tiger's body, and rushed to Jin Yao. In the twinkling of an eye, Zhao Shenbian and Jin Yao fought together again. The array was unstoppable, and the speed of spread was also gradually accelerated. When Xiao Yang pulled Murong Qianqian close to the barrier, the remaining gap at the edge of the array was only less than 10 feet in size. Seeing the only gap left, Xiao Yang couldn't help but tighten his heart slightly. At present, he didn't dare to keep it. He thought a little. The fighting spirit in his body just recovered gushed out. The pace at his feet changed. Tianjue's step was performed to the extreme in an instant. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yang and Murong Qianqian appeared before that array. Seeing that he was about to step out of the array, Xiao Yang couldn't help but relax a little. However, he didn't wait for him to breathe. Outside the array, the void space was suddenly distorted. Immediately, a figure wrapped under the black robe appeared in front of Xiao Yang and Murong Qianqian, blocking their way. Xiao Yang never thought that in addition to the 4 breath controlling the array, there was another person hidden here. Moreover, relying on the breath revealed by this person when he appeared, Xiao Yang could be sure that the latter must also be a 9-star and half emperor. At the same time, Jin Yao, who was fighting with Zhao Xian, couldn't help but change her face in an instant, and her beautiful eyebrows suddenly twisted into a ball. Unexpectedly, Zhao Xian in front of him still has this hand. If Xiao Yang and Murong Qianqian can't escape first, it will be dangerous next. Seeing the change in Jin Yao's pretty face, Zhao Xian smiled coldly. In order not to let Xiao Yang run away, he made complete preparations today. At present, the 5 dead attendants of his Zhao family are here, and everyone is the strength of the 9-star and half emperor. In addition, even if Xiao Yang Yong has the ability to challenge beyond the level, with him at the moment, it is absolutely impossible to set off any waves again. However, when Zhao Xian sneered in his heart and Jin Yao's face was gloomy, Xiao Yang's white face suddenly became fierce. His forward body did not stop because of the sudden appearance of the man in black, but became more violent and domineering at the moment. In this scene, even Murong Qianqian, who has been pulled by Xiao Yang, couldn't bear to show a look of horror on his pretty face. Xiao Yang's move is simply looking for his own death. Die. Seeing Xiao Yang's desperate appearance, the black-robed man standing opposite Xiao Yang also gave a cold voice, the light in his hand flashed, and a short knife appeared in his palm. Holding the short knife with his backhand, the black-robed man moved, and suddenly turned into a dark ghost-like shadow. The shiny short knife reflected a terrible cold light and stabbed Xiao Yang's throat. North King. However, at the next moment, when the black-robed man was less than 1 meter away from Xiao Yang, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly came out of Xiao Yang's mouth. At the same time, a strong dark shadow suddenly shot out from Xiao Yang's face. Just one face-to-face shot the oncoming black-robed man out in an instant. On the open sky, a man and a woman were flying towards the west at full speed. Although they had done their best, the fighting spirit in their bodies had long been in short supply. The speed of Xiao Yang's flying forward also slowed down. The wind of hunting gradually subsided in my ears. At the speed of Xiao Yang, even an ordinary emperor of 1-star and a half can easily catch up. Xiao Yang, are you all right? You've left so far. That guy shouldn't catch up again. In the void, Murong Qianqian held Xiao Yang, who was pale and weak, with a worried look on his exquisite pretty face. It was the first time since she knew Xiao Yang that she saw Xiao Yang who was not afraid of everything, showing such a weak state. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang, whose eyes were somewhat lax, clenched his teeth and shook his head. His body swept forward without a pause. Even if the girl on one side was not clear, he knew that although they had left the sky for nearly half an hour, Rao was so. At the speed of fighting the Emperor and the strong, if they wanted to catch up with them, it would only be a moment. Therefore, although it seemed safe at the moment, in fact, they were just a little away from danger. Moreover, Zhao Xian's strength is strong. Jin Yao is not his opponent at all. Even if it is delayed, it can't be delayed for too long. Once Jin Yao loses, Zhao Xian will surely catch up with them again. If they dare to pause, I'm afraid it's time to face Zhao Xian again. Xiao Yang can't bury Jin Yao's thoughts in vain. At this moment, Xiao Yang also put his last hope on Guyo. It seems that Xiao Yang's only way now is to rely on Guyo. It's just a pity that even at this moment, the old man didn't mean to do anything, which made Xiao Yang a little anxious. Hey, little guy, before entering the burning city, you were full of confidence and said you couldn't beat it and you could run. How come you're like this now? Hey, with a smile, Jiuyu's tone was completely irrelevant, which made Xiao Yang more anxious. Bone old, at this time, you can't still say these sarcastic words. You don't know. I don't expect you to be there for the reason why I say those words. Cut, smelly boy, I've helped you a lot along the way, but this time, I still hope to rely on your own strength. After all, even if I can lend you my strength, you will only have a sense of dependence in your heart. Do everything. The last hope is on me. It's not a good thing for your path of cultivation. Hearing Jiuyu's words, Xiao Yang looked a little stunned, and then Jiuyu continued to speak solemnly and said, think about it carefully. You used to be and you are now. Look a Leng, Xiao Yang's heart silently repeated the words of Jiuyu. At the same time, his body slowly flying forward also stopped. It's a special way for the sword to take the wrong edge. Boy, what to do next depends on how you choose. I can lend you my strength, which can make you easily defeat Zhao Xian. At the same time, it will also leave you an indelible legacy. How on earth? Choose for yourself. With a faint word, Guyo was silent again. At the same time, the atmosphere between heaven and earth became strangely silent with the silence of Xiao Yang. What's the matter? Murong Qianqian's charming body swept forward slightly, looked at Xiao Yang with a worried color on his pretty face, and his red lips trembled slightly. He helped Xiao Yang's jade hand and made an unconscious effort quietly. Are you afraid? Raised a pair of dark eyes, the lax look in his eyes was forcibly expelled by Xiao Yang, his teeth clenched, and every word seemed to be squeezed out between his teeth. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Murong Qianqian's pretty face couldn't help looking a little stunned and nodded slightly, but then he shook his exquisite little head fiercely, and the fear color on his pretty face quickly disappeared. I'm not afraid. As long as you're there, I'm sure that guy can't move us. The firmness of the tone in the girl's mouth made Xiao Yang feel surprised. The girl in front of her could put all her trust on him, a 6-star and half emperor, but what they had to face was a strong emperor. Finally, Xiao Yang also nodded fiercely. A far-fetched smile appeared on his bloodless face, which was regarded as a comfort to the girl in front of him. Immediately, he twisted his body and sat down on the hanging wall of the void. Take a break, too. I can detect that the guy's breath is getting closer and closer to us. Since there is no way to avoid this battle, let me meet him head-on, right? The tone was weak and said a word. Immediately, Xiao Yang slowly closed his eyes and read a move. The burning formula skill in his body worked with all its strength at this moment, but just made an action. Between heaven and earth, a surge of heaven and earth energy quickly gathered into a huge energy vortex over Xiao Yang's head. Seeing this scene, Murong Qianqian on one side dared not be careless. His fighting spirit ran all over his body, and a pair of smart beautiful eyes scanned around in case of accidents. An hour later, when Xiao Yang's pale face gradually turned around, his closed eyes suddenly opened angrily, and the dignified color in the dark pupil was self-evident. Coming. The tone was very dignified. Murong Qianqian, who was not aware of it, turned around and saw Xiao Yang who had stood up. With his eyes, there was nothing at the end of the distant line of sight. What's coming? Zhao Xian. As soon as the look on her pretty face changed slightly, the girl wanted to move, but she was pulled behind by Xiao Yang. At the same time, the dignified voice of words came out again. Step back and give Zhao Xian to me. Leng Bingshuang gave you to me. It's not for you to make a risk. If something happens to you, how can I explain to Leng Bingshuang? Hearing Xiao Yang's mention of cold frost, Murong Qianqian immediately tilted his mouth in his heart and wanted to speak, but was forced back by Xiao Yang's eyes. At the same time, between the heaven and earth, there were cold laughter full of cold and murderous meaning, but it came suddenly. Ha ha ha. Xiao Yang, you know you can't run away, so wait for death here. Hearing the disdain contained in the laughter, the dignified color on Xiao Yang's pale face was even worse. Staring at it, Zhao Xian, who looked a little embarrassed, also appeared in front of Xiao Yang and Murong Qianqian at the moment. Looking at Zhao Xian's slightly embarrassed appearance, I think he should have gone through a very difficult and fierce battle not long ago. Seeing Zhao Xian, Murong Qianqian's pretty face behind Xiao Yang immediately showed a look of fear, and then the whole pretty face became white. After seeing Zhao Xian's strength, the girl at the moment dare not face Zhao Xian with an ordinary heart. As for the heroic words like those not long ago, She dare not even think about it. It's not that a small half-emperor can easily match the strong one who fights against the emperor. Thinking of this, Murong Qianqian couldn't help raising her beautiful eyes and looking at Xiao Yang standing in front of her at the moment. Although everyone thinks that half-emperor is inferior to fighting emperor, it seems that Xiao Yang in front of him is an exception. You know, with the strength of the 6-star and half-emperor, you can make a strong man fight the emperor change his face. I'm afraid there will be no second person to do this except Xiao Yang in the whole continent. Where's Jin Yarrow? Compared with the idea in the heart of the girl behind him at the moment, Xiao Yang looked at Zhao Xian with a low face and said in a dark tone. It was beyond Xiao Yang's expectation to catch up with them in such a short time. Jin Yarrow is a strong fighting emperor with extraordinary strength. Zhao Xian should not get rid of her so soon unless something has happened to Jin Yarrow. Ha ha ha, Xiao Yang, you can't protect yourself. You still have leisure to take care of that woman. Instead of worrying about others, I think you'd better worry about yourself. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Zhao Xian sneered. Immediately, his body shook, the soles of his feet suddenly stepped on the void, and his body suddenly turned into a white light. With the momentum of thunder, in the twinkling of an eye, he had appeared in front of Xiao Yang, and his broad palm was firmly held out of thin air. Immediately, the snow-white long gun fell into his hand again. The whole-body snow-white spear spun twice in Zhao Xian's hand. The wind of hunting seemed to tear up the void. Then the next moment, the spear in Zhao Xian's hand suddenly stabbed forward. The sharp and matchless spear tip easily penetrated the void. In the blink of an eye, it had come to Xiao Yang. Die. A cold voice came out, and then the long gun in Zhao Xian's hand stabbed at Xiao Yang's eyebrows. Zhao Xian's body method like a ghost surprised Xiao Yang. As early as the moment when the former took out his long gun, Xiao Yang had fully mobilized the power of the road gathered in his body. At the moment when Zhao Xian stabbed the long gun at Xiao Yang's head, a painted black tent was also quickly condensed in front of Xiao Yang. Drink. Seeing that Xiao Yang once again condensed the painted black tent, Zhao Xian couldn't help but move slightly in his heart. While the look on his face changed, the prestige on the long gun in his hand also became more frightening at the same time. He had seen the horror of the tent before. Xiao Yang used the speed shown by the ghost, but his heart was shocked. If he did his best, Xiao Yang's speed might be comparable to those who had just broken through the fight against the emperor. And this is enough to show that Xiao Yang's 6 tabernacles are extraordinary. Even it can be described by the word against the sky. Of course, then again, what kind of heaven and earth avenue is not an existence against the sky, and what's more, it is a void avenue that can rank the top among all the avenues. It's just a pity that although Xiao Yang is trying his best to urge the power of the road, in the end, when Xiao Yang's body disappeared into the 6 tents, the gun tip that pierced the void head-on still left a shocking blood mark in the center of Xiao Yang's eyebrows. At this moment, even with Xiao Yang's mind, his whole body was filled with cold sweat. Xiao Yang could even clearly realize that while the gun tip was close to himself, he had felt a strong breath of death. He had no doubt that if he was more than half a minute later, the spotless snow-white long gun would instantly penetrate his head. The appearance of this scene also made Murong Qianqian, who was worried about Xiao Yang in the rear, mention his heart to his throat in an instant, and a pair of beautiful eyes immediately became red until he saw that the long gun finally stabbed on the void, and the girl's hanging heart suddenly relaxed. At the same time, Xiao Yang's body also stumbled and rolled out of the void in the distance. The look on his face was extremely dignified. Blood stains spread all over his forehead, dripping with blood, and even the dense white bones under him could be seen faintly. These scars, except the one in the middle of the eyebrow, were all caused by the vigorous wind attached to the gun tip. If there was no blood mark marked by the gun tip, the rest of the vigorous wind would naturally have no choice but to Xiao Yang. It was precisely because of that scar that Xiao Yang looked at Xian for a long time and couldn't delay for a while and a half. As long as Xiao Yang's 6 tents were consumed, Xiao Yang was the fish on the chopping board for Zhao Xian at that time. Fortunately, he avoided Zhao Xian's attack, but Xiao Yang didn't feel any less relaxed. For Xiao Yang, his own safety is nothing, but now he is walking with Murong Qianqian. Once he falls, Zhao Xian will never let Murong Qianqian go. This is not the result Xiao Yang wants to see. However, without waiting for Xiao Yang to think more, Zhao Xian gave a cold hum with hatred, waved his long gun fiercely, and rushed over to Xiao Yang again. Hum. Xiao Yang, I want to see how many times you can hide. At the same time, Zhao Xian came to Xiao Yang again. He waved his long gun and blasted Xiao Yang's head. At the same time, the look on Xiao Yang's face quickly became severe. The cold light flickered in a pair of dark eyes. When his feet changed, His body quickly hid to one side. The palm under his sleeve robe suddenly held tightly at the moment. Immediately after that, the dark ruler appeared from Xiao Yang's palm. This time, Xiao Yang doesn't intend to retreat. Taking attack as defense may be Xiao Yang's best choice at the moment. Blindly retreating will only encourage arrogance, one ebb and flow, but for a long time, Xiao Yang will easily lose the battle. Anyway, sooner or later, he will lose. Why not fight with all his strength? With this in mind, Xiao Yang's palm held the giant ruler tighter for a few minutes. The cold light in a pair of dark pupils and the wrist turned. When the long gun stabbed, the giant ruler in Xiao Yang's hand was also stirred up flexibly and quickly. While his body retreated violently, the sharp gun tip with a sharp edge collided with Xiao Yang's Shen heavy ruler at the next moment. Ding! With a clear sound of metal and iron collision, sparks splashed all over the place. The terrible power contained in the gun tip immediately shook back the huge ruler in Xiao Yang's hand. Together with Xiao Yang, it was also a backward shock of body shaking. The body was embarrassed to withdraw from the distance of 100 feet. The terrible force from the giant ruler made Xiao Yang's palm quickly numb, and the whole arm trembled at the moment. On the other side, seeing that Xiao Yang took out his weapon again, Zhao Xian's face couldn't help showing a look of surprise. His eyes narrowed falsely, and his silvery white pupils were full of indelible surprise. But unexpectedly, in such a situation, Xiao Yang dared to take out weapons against the enemy. This courage alone was enough to make Zhao Xian look at him with new eyes. Xiao Yang, I have to admit that you are really a terrible person. I think I can't face the strong emperor without fear with the strength of half-emperor. Although Zhao Xian is full of killing Xiao Yang, he is absolutely true at the moment. Dare to ask, is to look at the whole continent and dare to face the strong fighting emperor with the strength of half-emperor. Who can do it? What's more, Xiao Yang is just a 6-star and a half-emperor. I'm afraid this strength will only be disdained and ridiculed in the eyes of any strong emperor fighting person. But who can know that such a 6-star and a half-emperor who will not be regarded by any strong fighter will almost hurt a 2-star fighter? If you can grow up, maybe you can become a strong person like the great man in heaven, or even stronger. Unfortunately, you have to blame yourself for everything today. Even if I don't kill you, the 4 main doors will not let you go. As long as you are in the western regions, you will never have a chance to get rid of them. Shaking his head, Zhao Xian's face showed a look of regret, which was quite surprising, but then his face changed into a forest again. Waving the long gun in his hand, the sharp tip of the gun made a sharp and piercing sound when it crossed the void. At the moment when the long gun suddenly stopped, the surrounding void was a surge. Come on, let me see how powerful the 4 main sects can be in the western regions. Hiss. The heavy ruler fiercely swept the void in front of Xiao Yang, and immediately fell heavily on one side of Xiao Yang's body. A severe color appeared on his pale face. As soon as his palm turned, he held the heavy ruler back, and his eyes raised, the gorgeous fire gradually condensed in the depths of Xiao Yang's pupils and turned into a gorgeous fire lotus, rotating slowly. At the same time, Xiao Yang's heart moved. He had just recovered some fighting spirit in his body. At this moment, he mobilized all his energy. Drink. Suddenly, Xiao Yang uttered a low cry in his heart. The soles of his feet severely stepped on the void. His body immediately burst out and turned into a black light. He rushed to Zhao Xian first. In the blink of an eye, the distance of 100 feet had shrunk by more than half. Zhao Xian shook his long gun and leaned forward. The sharp tip of the gun stabbed Xiao Yang. Ding! At the moment when the sharp gun tip collided with the heavy ruler, a bright spark burst out. Xiao Yang and others were unmoved, and the great power from the weapons of both sides was removed at the same time. Then, their bodies moved again, and the weapons waved, and they collided with each other again. Dang dang! The moves on their hands were open and closed, and there was no burden at all. Whether the war situation was dumped or not was completely determined by the domineering change of their moves. They fought with flesh. Facing Xiao Yang, Zhao Xian couldn't help but be frightened. Although he was a strong fighter and had countless achievements in his life, he didn't find that the latter's fighting skills were equally terrible until he faced Xiao Yang at the moment. Zhao Xian's own strength is far better than Xiao Yang. Otherwise, if he is an opponent of the same level, he will be easily suppressed by Xiao Yang if he is not even in the face of Xiao Yang. Moreover, the strange black ruler in Xiao Yang's hand also surprised Zhao Xian. The black ruler can know that this thing must be very heavy just by looking at it. However, at the moment, the flexibility in Xiao Yang's hand is no less than the long gun in his hand. However, whenever the heavy ruler collides with Zhao Xian's long gun, Zhao Xian can clearly perceive the terrible power on it, which brings Xiao Yang's fighting growth, not at all. With the battle between them, bright sparks burst out continuously in the sky. Zhao Xian's face looked more and more surprised, while Xiao Yang's face quickly turned white. Just as Xiao Yang expected, facing Zhao Xian, even if he did his best, it wouldn't take long. Moreover, at the moment, Xiao Yang can still insist because Zhao Xian in front of him intends to test Xiao Yang's real strength. Otherwise, the battle between them should have been ended by Zhao Xian. Dang! It was another bright and fierce collision, but different from before. This time, Xiao Yang was defeated in front of the long gun. The fighting spirit in his body is almost exhausted. Xiao Yang has no extra strength to continue fighting. He has really reached the end of the road. Seeing Xiao Yang's retreat, Zhao Xian didn't mean to stop. His body flashed. In the twinkling of an eye, he immediately came to Xiao Yang, swung the long gun in his hand, and the gun rod hit Xiao Yang's chest hard. Bang! A sound mixed with bone fracture sounded. In Xiao Yang's eyes, a pair of dark pupils suddenly enlarged, and the whole person's breath quickly became listless. Xiao Yang, you lost. Puff. The faint voice of words seemed very indifferent. At the same time, watching Murong Qianqian from a distance, a pretty face suddenly became white, and the whole delicate body couldn't help shaking violently at this moment. Hiss. The tip of the gun crossed the void and reflected a dazzling cold light. Under the control of Zhao Xian, the tip of the gun stood straight in the center of Xiao Yang's eyebrows. As long as he made a little effort, Xiao Yang would immediately become his ghost. This video will end here.